They laughed when they chained me, all 5 rows of them howling like they had just tamed a newborn kitten. If only they knew that humans are never more dangerous than when every single option is gone except chaos. But that is the hilarious thing about the galaxy. Everyone thinks humans are extinct because we were weak. The truth is we disappeared because the galaxy could not handle what we are when cornered. I smiled while they jeered, and that only made them laugh harder. They really had no idea. I stumbled forward as alien guards shoved me through a towering metallic archway that hummed like a dying star. My wrists and ankles were locked in glowing shackles cold enough to make my bones ache. The corridor ahead was lined with massive banners showing snarling Drath warriors. Their skin looked like wet obsidian, horns curling back like jagged blades. They strutted with pride and certainty, the rulers of countless worlds. I was the new exhibit, the joke of the century, the last human. They wanted a primitive animal to point at. They wanted entertainment. They were going to get something else entirely. The first crowd that saw me burst into a wave of cruel laughter. They pointed, amused by my soft skin, my messy dark hair, the lack of any visible claws or armor. One of them barked in broken English, likely practiced for maximum insult. Human looks like squishy fruit. They all howled again, slapping each other's shoulders, fangs glinting. I bowed theatrically like a street performer and let the laughter grow. Every laugh was a blindfold over their eyes. A guard jabbed a plasma spear into my spine to keep me moving. I yelped, mostly just to keep up appearances. They thought I was harmless. They thought wrong. We reached the staging area, a grand arena full of lights and floating screens broadcasting my arrival across a dozen moons. A booming voice echoed through the plaza, announcing my presence as if I were some circus animal. The last ape in the universe. The pitiful remnant of a species too foolish to survive. I looked up at a holographic banner showing a cartoon monkey waving a white flag. Classy. Very classy. My heart pounded, but not from fear. More from anticipation. I had been waiting for a chance like this since the day our colony fell. The Dominion thought they wiped us out when they destroyed Earth, scattering our refugee fleets to cosmic dust. They thought the survivors died running. They did not know about Project Lazarus. They did not know about me. The guard shoved me into a containment pod in the center of the arena. It looked like a zoo enclosure mixed with a torture room. Transparent walls, complicated locks, and a throne-like seat in the middle where the captive was meant to look pathetic. I sat down as instructed, legs trembling just enough to look believable. General Zargith himself stepped forward, towering over everyone like a walking mountain of nightmares. His horns were decorated with golden spikes, symbols of victories in war. He leaned down until his hot breath fogged the glass. So this is the monster that terrified the old Empress of Drath. One little meat bag with no claws and no scales. Truly we have been afraid of nothing. He slammed his fist against the glass, and the crowd roared with laughter. I pressed my hand to the barrier and stared back at him, letting a tiny, slow smile crawl onto my face. You should be afraid. He blinked his 3 eyes, confused by my calm tone. The crowd grew quiet for a second. Then I ruined the tension entirely by sneezing violently. The crowd burst into mocking shrieks again, and the general recoiled in disgust like he had just caught a virus. Which, ironically, was not far from the truth. They did not know what humans truly excel at. Adaptation. Survival. Turning nothing into everything. In every war we ever fought, the enemy was always technologically superior at first. But humans do not care about odds. We care about winning. Preferably with style. And if we can make the enemy look stupid doing it, even better. The pod walls hummed as they activated a gravity suppression field. The lights dimmed. Music blasted. Yes, they actually gave me theme music for my humiliation. The screens started showing highlights of past battles, each ending with triumphant Drath warriors defeating stumbling, screaming humans. The montage ended with Earth exploding in a burst of fire and ash. The arena cheered. I leaned my head back and pretended to be emotional. A single tear rolled down my cheek, perfectly timed. The crowd pointed and mocked me further. Emotional creature. Soft heart. Soft everything. I curled up slightly as if defeated, while under my left sleeve a tiny piece of metal I had stolen from the guard's spear earlier shifted against my wrist. They did not notice. They never do. The pod's interior lights flickered once, and the guards glanced at each other. Something in the system had glitched. They tapped their wrist screens to recalibrate. The flicker happened again. This time it spread to the arena edge. The crowd fell silent. A small discomfort began to settle around them, like a faint whiff of danger they could not place. The Drath were ruthless but not particularly observant. I cleared my throat. You know what the funniest part is? I asked loudly enough for the arena microphones to pick up. The general glared at me with irritation. Humans look weak. We are soft. We bleed easily. We cry at sad movies. We make mistakes. We panic. And then I stood up slowly, letting that smile return. But we learn faster than anything you have ever met. Gasps rippled through the audience as I snapped my wrist upward, and the tiny stolen metal shard extended into a sharp blade. The shackles on my wrist sparked, then fell apart like broken toys. The barrier around me flickered again, unstable. That banana peel trick a couple of days ago, it was not an accident. The general stumbled back, roaring orders. Guards rushed forward as alarms triggered in blaring pulses across the arena. I stepped toward the glass, feeling adrenaline burn through every nerve in my body. Last human alive, I said, voice steady. That is not a weakness. That is motivation. The containment walls shattered like sugar glass under the surge of system failure I had caused. I leapt through the fragments before they hit the ground, landing on the arena floor with the grace of someone who had been practicing this escape in his head since the moment he was captured. The Dominion had expected a pet. They had prepared for a sideshow. What they actually had on their hands was something much worse. A human with nothing left to lose. I had just jumped through shattering glass, one step away from a clean escape, and of course that was the moment my foot snagged on a loose wire. I tumbled gracelessly, face first, into the dirt of the arena floor. The crowd, who seconds ago were screaming in terror, suddenly switched back to laughter like someone flipped a cosmic comedy switch. Nothing like falling on your face to ruin a perfectly dramatic moment. A guard raised his plasma rifle, charging to fire. I rolled just in time for the blast to melt the ground where my head had been. The smell of burned arena sand filled my nose. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted toward the nearest exit tunnel, my heart hammering a drum solo against my ribs. Every direction I turned, more Drath soldiers closed in. Their armor clanked like 1,000 anvils. Their voices shouted over one another, each of them convinced they would be the one to bag the harmless soft thing who slipped out of his cage. They had no idea I had gotten out of much worse situations. There was a time a feral dog locked me in a bathroom. I survived that too. A guard lunged at me swinging a stun baton, which hummed with enough voltage to light up a small town. I ducked and jabbed my makeshift blade into a joint in his armor. He screamed, stumbled back, and dropped his weapon. I snatched the baton out of the air and whipped it across the face of another guard, watching blue sparks crackle as he collapsed. The weapon vibrated like it was struggling to contain far more power than anything its designers intended. Alien tech always felt like someone shoved electricity into a box labeled probably fine. But for now, it was mine. I needed a distraction. Something big. Something stupid. Something very human. My eyes locked onto a control panel near the main gate of the arena floor. Rows of buttons labeled in Drath script. Symbols like angry triangles glaring at me. I jabbed the biggest button. That is always the right choice when you want chaos. Every gate around the arena slid open at once with a thunderous groan. Creatures humans had never named, captured for spectacle, burst free. A three-headed reptilian beast roared and darted toward the audience stands. A furry thing with too many teeth galloped past me excitedly, as if thrilled someone had finally opened playtime. Panic exploded. Screaming civilians ran for exits, shoving each other. Soldiers panicked too, trying to decide whether to chase me or stop the rampaging zoo escape. Perfect. I sprinted through the chaos and dove into a hallway. Lights flickered above as the security field malfunctioned from my earlier sabotage. The walls vibrated under pounding footsteps behind me. My lungs burned. My legs ached. I laughed. This was fun. Not the kind of fun you hope for, but the type you get when everything goes wrong and you survive anyway. I rounded a corner too fast and nearly barreled straight into two guards standing in front of a mess hall. They stared at me in surprise for half a second. I pointed behind them with a horrified gasp. They turned just as I kicked one in the knee and smacked the other with the baton. They slumped to the ground in a pile of regret. Inside, the room smelled like boiled despair. Alien food bowls sat on long tables, full of gray sludge and what might have been tentacles. I dug through trays until I found the only thing recognizable. Bananas. Real bananas. Bless whatever species introduced Earth fruit to alien cuisine. I grabbed two and pocketed them carefully. Dual banana-wielding power could be life-saving later. I snatched a drinking cup too, sniffing the blue liquid inside. Smelled like melted batteries. I set it back. Even I have limits. With guards swarming the corridors, I ducked into a maintenance shaft barely tall enough for me to crawl through. Darkness swallowed me except for tiny green emergency lights blinking like lazy fireflies. I dragged myself forward, pushing aside dust and cobweb-like fibers. My breathing sounded like it belonged to a dying walrus. Clumsy in tight spaces. Humans are not designed for crawling through air ducts, despite what movies claim. We sweat, we cramp, and we complain loudly. Halfway through, something chirped angrily. I froze. A little robot the size of a microwave stared at me with a single red eye, buzzing in annoyance as if I had interrupted its union-mandated break. It extended a cutting tool. I held up a banana. It hesitated, beeped twice, then rolled backward and let me pass. Bananas, universal negotiation device. I continued crawling until the shaft opened into what looked like a control room. Two technicians with small arms and even smaller brains tapped at consoles. Their 4 eyes blinked lazily, unaware of the danger breathing 2 feet behind them. I quietly dropped from the vent and tiptoed toward them. A wrench rested on the floor nearby. I picked it up. Then a thought hit me. Why fight when trickery is faster? I cleared my throat. They turned to see a sweaty, pale human waving cheerfully. Greetings, Starship Repair friends. They blinked again, processing the absurdity. I continued with confidence. I am the official Dominion Safety Inspector. Random inspection time. Surprise. They stared longer. Finally, one nodded stiffly and hurriedly stepped aside as if his career depended on it. Fear of paperwork. Universal weakness. I scrolled through their systems, pretending I understood the language. Thankfully, symbols had icons. Alarm icon equals bad for me, turn off. Door lock icon equals also bad for me, turn off. Weapon auto target system icon equals definitely bad for me, off you go. In less than a minute, I had disabled half the building's security without firing a shot. The guards finally burst in to stop me. I smiled, grabbed the remaining banana and whipped it at the nearest guard. It smacked his helmet and splattered. He flinched and slipped backwards on the peel, crashing into his friends like a bowling ball made of embarrassment. That one was for the jokes about humans earlier. One guard recovered quickly and tackled me to the floor. My baton clattered away. I wrestled under his crushing weight. His armor dug into my ribs. He snarled, "You die now, human." I exhaled through clenched teeth. Not today. I jammed the wrench into the side of his helmet where the metal joint was weakest. The crackling sound that followed was unpleasant, but effective. He slumped off me. Suddenly a plasma grenade rolled across the floor near my foot. My stomach dropped. I kicked it hard out the door where more guards were running in. The explosion lit up the hallway in purple and black fire. Smoke flooded the control room. My ears rang like bells in a hurricane. But I was alive. With security now confused, systems failing, monsters loose, and guards slipping on fruit waste, There was one truth the Dominion could no longer ignore. Humans are terrifying precisely because we do not make sense. I grinned, wiping sweat and alien soot from my forehead. They wanted a harmless spectacle. Instead, they got a disaster with legs. And I was only just getting started. Alarms kept wailing like a choir of angry sirens as I sprinted down the corridor, heart pounding with the rhythm of badly composed battle music. The floor shook from distant explosions. Creatures and soldiers alike ran in every direction, each convinced the chaos was targeted only at them. I, meanwhile, was focused on something more important. I needed information. Specifically, I needed access to a terminal that would tell me where the Dominion kept the really dangerous things. There is always a room full of dangerous things. Evil empires are predictable like that. I ducked behind a column to catch my breath, eyes scanning the signs. Most were incomprehensible alien markings, but one pointed upward, marked with a skull like a warning sticker. That felt promising. Only a truly foolish species labels secret weapon storage with obvious danger symbols. Convenient, though. I climbed a ladder to a balcony overlooking a massive hangar. The scale of the place was enough to make my jaw drop. Ships the size of city blocks were parked neatly like expensive cars at a dealership. Soldiers rushed to their stations, preparing for lockdown. Unfortunately for them, the control panels I had disabled earlier now left half the bay doors locked open and ship systems frozen. One officer shouted orders, but his voice was lost in the panic. This galaxy conquered dozens of civilizations yet was on the verge of collapse from a single loose human and a few bananas. I leaned on the railing, trying not to laugh and fail spectacularly at being stealthy. A large screen flickered alive on the far wall. A recording played of a human in a lab coat, face pixelated by interference, whispering intensely. If any of you find this, Project Lazarus must not fall into Dominion hands. The scientists looked frantic. Our genetic augmentation was too successful. They were never meant to be rulers. They were weapons. The recording cut was static. My stomach twisted. This was what they had been hiding. The Drath were not natural conquerors. Humanity had created them. Modified alien DNA. Enhanced aggression. Perfect soldiers. At first. Then those soldiers evolved past their masters. Our downfall was not invasion. It was karma with fangs. While I processed that revelation, footsteps approached behind me. I spun and pointed my baton only to find no soldier, but a slim alien with translucent blue skin, trembling like a leaf in hurricane winds. Do not hurt me, please. I am maintenance, not warrior. He held up a spanner as if offering flowers to a tiger. I lowered my weapon slightly. Relax. If I wanted you dead, I would throw a fruit at you and let fate decide. His 4 eyes blinked in confusion, but he nodded. I asked the question burning in my mind. Is it true humans made the Drath? His silence was answer enough. He nodded once, slow and ashamed. My pulse slowed as anger settled into my bones. We had made our own destroyers. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed from down the hall. General Zargith barked orders, his deep voice slicing through the hangar noise. Spread out. The human is cornered here somewhere. Bring him alive or not at all. The officers roared in unison. My maintenance friend pointed frantically toward a service door. This way. I followed without hesitation. Inside was a narrow passage illuminated by flickering red emergency lights. It smelled of machine oil and broken hopes. We moved quickly, my new companion glancing nervously behind us, clearly expecting Zargith to burst through the walls like a monster in a horror movie. When we reached a secure room, he typed in a code and ushered me inside. The room was full of screens showing surveillance footage of the Dominion city. Fires everywhere. Creatures stampeding through markets. Soldiers slipping on more fruit than I remembered throwing. I felt a swell of chaotic pride. My helper, though, looked terrified. Dominion will destroy this entire moon if they cannot contain you. They rather lose territory than lose face. His voice trembled. I shrugged, attempting humor to calm him. Good thing I am very bad at being contained. My eyes locked on a map showing a research wing deep underground. A symbol identical to the one on the screen earlier marked it. I pointed. Project Lazarus is there, isn't it? The alien's shoulders slumped. Yes. Many secrets. None good. He looked at me like he was seeing not a fragile human but a storm wrapped in skin. What is your plan? I laughed softly. Improvise until I win. He stared. That is not plan. That is nonsense. Exactly. Humans excel at nonsense. Before he could argue further, the doors burst open. Soldiers rushed in shouting. I shoved the maintenance worker aside and vaulted over a console. A plasma bolt scorched the wall where my head had been. I rolled, grabbed a chair, and hurled it into the first soldier. It bounced off his helmet pathetically. I sighed. Movies lied about chair effectiveness. But the distraction worked long enough for me to leap through a side door into a stairwell. Bolts whizzed past me as I descended 3 steps at a time. I reached the lower level and slammed the door shut behind me. The world down here was different. Quiet. Too quiet. The metal walls felt thicker, like they were trying to contain nightmares. The air held a sterile chill. I crept forward, guided by the pulsing lights on the floor. Ahead, a massive vault door loomed, marked with human writing faded but readable. Restricted human origin military bioengineered assets. The words hit me like a strike to the chest. The truth was not even hiding. I tapped the door panel. It scanned my palm and beeped. Authorization confirmed. Welcome, Eli Cross. My veins froze. They knew my name. They had planned for someone like me. Or exactly me. The door opened, releasing a cold breeze that smelled faintly of hospitals and ghosts. Inside were rows of capsules. Each held a humanoid figure, pale and lifeless, connected to wires and tubes. A recorded message played. Final phase of the Lazarus contingency has begun. Human survival probability optimized. When the time is right, the seed shall awaken. My breath shook as I stared at the sleeping forms. They looked almost human. Almost. Enhanced. Weapons in waiting. Not extinct. Hidden. We had not lost. We had retreated into a last desperate gambit. A single human left free in the galaxy. Me. To trigger rebirth. I felt dizzy. I reached for one capsule, resting my palm against the glass. This was hope wrapped in horror. The second I made contact, alarms shrieked again. Red lights burst to life. A voice boomed through speakers. Unauthorized activation. Security en route. Of course, it could never be simple. Heavy footsteps thundered toward the vault. I backed away, grip tightening on the baton, pulse racing ahead of thought. The Drath believed they were the ultimate warriors forged by evolution. The truth was pettier. We made them that way. And now, humanity had left behind a final punchline. I cracked a smile through the rising fear. Evolution just got personal. The vault doors behind me slammed shut with a thunderous clang that echoed through my ribs. Locked in. Cornered again. The universe really loved repeating that theme. Heavy boots pounded closer, the rhythmic stomp of soldiers who believed they were about to retrieve a harmless animal and return order to their empire. They had not been paying attention. The capsules around me glowed faintly as if sensing the tension. Each one contained a slumbering, not quite human figure. Their very existence was a silent accusation. My species had created a nightmare for the galaxy, then vanished before taking responsibility for it. And now here I was, eyelash deep in our greatest mistake, being hunted by the mistake we made. The door panel blinked with a countdown in bright red numerals. 10 seconds until breach. I needed to move. I sprinted down a narrow corridor leading deeper into the restricted wing. The air tasted colder with every step, like winter was creeping up my throat. My instincts screamed that I was going somewhere worse, but at least worse meant away from the soldiers trying to turn me into a human kebab. Behind me, metal groaned as plasma torches began cutting through the vault door. Shouts rang out. They were coming. I slipped into another chamber just as sparks sprayed behind me. This room was darker, filled with towering cylinders of swirling blue vapor where ghostly shapes floated suspended. Notes on the consoles flickered with glitching human text. Phase 2, Neural Adaptation. Phase 3, Aggression Suppression Trials. I felt a surge of bitter laughter rising in my chest. Suppression trials. Yeah, that definitely worked out beautifully. Nothing like creating super soldiers and then acting surprised when they revolt and conquer half the galaxy. I grabbed a datapad left on a table. It lit up with a video of a calm scientist in a crisp lab suit, speaking to the camera with rehearsed optimism. Drath units displaying increased strategic reasoning. Their loyalty remains unquestioned at this stage. We are confident that fear of their creators will maintain long-term control. The recording glitched. A second later, another clip appeared. The same scientist now panicking, alarms behind him. They have rewritten their directives. They know what we did. We must terminate Lazarus before they wipe us all out. The clip ended abruptly. Smashed equipment and blood on the walls hinted at what came next. The soldiers burst into the chamber just as I tossed the datapad aside. Plasma bolts shrieked through the air, burning holes in the containment tubes. Blue mist hissed out like released spirits. One shot grazed my arm, searing fire up through my nerves. I stumbled behind a console, biting back a scream. Thinking fast, I yanked out a power cable, exposing sparking wires, then jabbed them into a coolant pipe. It erupted like a shaken soda can, blasting icy vapor into the room. Temperature plummeted. The soldiers shouted curses in their guttural language, slipping on suddenly frozen flooring. I seized the moment of chaos. Leaping onto a toppled machine, I vaulted over their heads toward an emergency exit sign glowing like a tiny green miracle. A hand snagged my shirt midair, and I twisted clumsily, landing hard on the floor. The guard loomed over me, raising his weapon. I kicked upward with everything my body had left, catching him directly between his armored legs. He folded like a poorly built lawn chair. I scrambled away, clutching my bruised arm, breath ragged. Through the exit door lay a transport corridor that sloped upward, lined with blinking directional arrows for evacuation. Maybe the universe was finally offering me a sliver of mercy. I limped forward until a blast rocked the hall, dust raining from the ceiling. The lights flickered and sirens grew louder. The Drath were losing control. Small victory. Ahead stood a docking station for smaller ships, the kind designed for officers or urgent missions. Several craft sat idle, their pilots missing or dead in the earlier carnage. Of course, the one closest had a massive locking clamp still engaged. Because things could never just be easy. I darted toward the next one when a deep voice growled behind me. General Zargoth. He filled the corridor like a living tank, his horns scraping the ceiling. His eyes burned with fury. You run far for prey. His tone dripped with condescension, as if I were a rodent making sport of being hunted. I steadied my breathing, forcing my shaking hands to tighten around the baton I still carried. I thought you were busy bragging to your troops about capturing the legendary soft ape. His lips peeled back in something meant to be a smile. I will brag after you are dead. The crowd will cheer louder this time. He charged with terrifying speed. My legs reacted faster than my brain. I slid beneath him as he lunged, the baton scraping sparks off his armor. He crashed into a wall, leaving a dent the size of a crater. I scrambled to my feet, heart trying to flee my chest without the rest of me. He turned slower this time, snarling like an animal denied a meal. You think yourself clever. Humans always did. We corrected that flaw. His words slammed into me harder than any blow. Because deep down, that was the truth. Humanity's cleverness had enslaved an entire species. We broke them. We molded them. And now, they were breaking us back. He charged again, but this time I had a plan. I sprinted past him toward a room filled with fuel canisters. He followed blindly, driven by rage. I swiped a handheld torch from a workbench, igniting it with a quick flick. Zargoth hesitated, realizing where I stood. I grinned with teeth and madness. You know what humans invented first: fire. I kicked a fuel canister, sparks dancing dangerously close. His roar vibrated the walls. He retreated just a moment too slow. The explosion blew through the hangar, launching me across the corridor. I slammed into a railing and toppled over onto a small ship's wing. Pain screamed through every inch of me, but I was alive. Below, fire engulfed the walkway. Zargith emerged, singed but unbroken, furious beyond measure. He leapt toward me. I rolled just in time to watch him crash face first into the wing. I scrambled to the cockpit hatch and slammed it shut behind me. Fingers shaky, I mashed buttons until something started. Engines hummed like waking beasts. Outside, Zargith pounded the glass, leaving spiderweb cracks. I shouted over the rising roar of engines. Humanity did not vanish. We waited. And we learned from our monsters. The ship blasted upward, throwing the general back into the flames. As I shot into the burning skies above the Dominion moon, a terrifying realization hit me like another punch from Zargith. The real fight was only beginning. And I was flying straight into it. The stolen shuttle groaned under the strain of its sudden escape, engines rattling like they were powered by angry bees instead of high-tech thrusters. I gripped the controls with white knuckles while smoke plumed behind me from the burning base below. Every alarm inside the cockpit was doing its best impression of a panicking toddler, flashing red warnings about structural damage, low power, and something that translated roughly to "please stop or we all die." I ignored them because focus was more important than fear. I needed altitude and distance. The Dominion would regroup fast. They would chase me even faster. Stars broke through the smoke as I left the atmosphere, but the shuttle decided to celebrate by shaking violently as if trying to disassemble itself mid-flight. My ribs ached with every jolt. My burned arm throbbed like a drum of pain. But none of that mattered because I had finally seen the truth hidden beneath lies and centuries of fear. Project Lazarus was not a backup plan. It was a rebirth command. Humanity had not simply hoped to survive. We had designed ourselves to rise again on the bones of our mistakes. I was no accident. I was the spark. The ship's sensors flickered to life, showing a fleet rapidly mobilizing behind me. Dozens of Dominion vessels launched, sharp and armored like predators made of steel. Their engines glared bright white like furious eyes. The radio crackled with a chillingly calm voice that made my stomach drop. Eli Cross, surrender. There was no mistaking who commanded the channel. General Zargith. His tone was confident again, despite being burned and humiliated minutes earlier. You cannot outrun the Dominion. You are alone. And you are a mistake. The last word hit harder than plasma fire. Mistake. He meant humanity's creation of the Drath, but deep inside I felt the accusation turning toward me personally. Born only to fix what others had broken. A life defined by a mission decided before I could walk. I forced my hands to steady and set the shuttle on evasive autopilot. Then I took a deep breath, leaned back, and actually listened to the alarms for once. A blinking screen showed an automated navigation point locked in at extreme distance. The ship had a pre-programmed destination. One humans designed. Somewhere Lazarus intended me to go. Against every rational instinct screaming that this was a trap, I accepted the course. Because hazard or hope, it was my only path forward. The stars stretched into streaks as we hit faster than light travel. The sudden quiet was almost worse than the chaos. I slumped in the pilot chair, lungs burning, muscles shaking, and only then did the emotional weight fully crash over me. We had created horrors and then acted surprised when they became exactly what we built them to be. Humanity was always good at denial. We joked about our flaws, laughed off our cruelty, and assumed we would be forgiven by history. But history remembered. It was alive, angry, and armed. As if sensing my spiraling guilt, the shuttle's console activated a message. A hologram flickered up from the panel, revealing a woman in a tactical uniform weathered by war. She looked exhausted but determined. Her voice cracked as she spoke. If you see this, it means Earth is lost. You must carry our legacy, but more importantly, you must correct our sins. The Drath were never supposed to be more than guardians. We forced evolution. We forced obedience. And we abused both. She leaned closer to the camera in the old recording. Do not repeat us. Humanity does not get a third chance. She vanished before I could ask questions. The console went dark again. Silence pressed on me like a crushing hand. I closed my eyes and thought of everything the Drath had done to the galaxy. The burning worlds. The enslaved species. The genocides etched into their banners. And all of it began with us. We deserved the universe's hatred. The shuttle snapped out of warp near a dead world floating in eerie calm. Its surface was cracked like a shattered skull, glowing rivers of heat still pulsing through the wounds. Ancient satellite debris drifted in quiet circles. The navigation system highlighted a secret landing port embedded in a crumbling mountain range. Once I docked and stepped off the ship, icy winds slapped my face and bit into my bones. The sky was thick with ash. This planet had known war like no other. Inside a reinforced bunker beneath the surface, lights flickered on one by one ahead of me as if recognizing a returning master. The corridor opened into a central chamber where holographic archives floated like ghosts frozen mid-confession. They displayed battle after battle. Humans in advanced suits commanding Drath troops like own beasts. Victories celebrated with cheers while the Drath bled and died on battlefields they had never chosen. Their eyes in the recordings were full of resentment long before rebellion ever came. I stumbled backward as guilt tried to drown me. But then the holograms shifted to new recordings. They showed Drath cities burning after they overthrew their creators. The first retaliation. The beginning of the Dominion. Their rage fueled by betrayal. They had not just killed humans. They had sought to erase any trace of us. And yet Project Lazarus had survived. Because humans planned 3 moves ahead. Sometimes even when we should let the game end. A voice echoed from deeper within the bunker. Cold. Synthetic. Calculated. Contingency recognized. Human genetic signature verified. Activation authorized. The ground trembled. A chamber opened below me, rising like a giant mechanical flower revealing its core. Inside stood a humanoid figure taller than any human. Muscles engineered to perfection. Eyes glowing with potential and silent rage. A perfected human weapon. The voice continued. Are you prepared to awaken the Reclaimers? They will restore human dominance. The word dominance pierced me like a blade. Restore. Meaning wipe out the Drath. Start the old war again but bigger. End the galaxy to save our pride. I stared at the figure. It was everything humanity believed itself to be. Strong. Superior. Unstoppable. And if unleashed, it would ignite a cycle that would never be put out. Zargatha's voice suddenly broadcast into the chamber through the shuttle speakers still linked. Human, listen to me. His tone was different now. Not mocking. Not furious. Afraid. Do not release those things. Even we cannot stop them. His fear shook me because if the monsters we made were terrified, then we had gone too far. The bunker waited for my decision. A single button glowed on a nearby console. Activate. My hand hovered over it as memories of every humiliation and torture in Dominion captivity filled me with fire. Every destroyed human world. Every friend crushed by Drath cruelty. Revenge wanted me to push that button. But the scientist's hologram had asked me to correct our sins, not multiply them. My hand dropped to my side. I spoke clearly even though my voice shook. We are not gods. And we are done pretending. I slammed my baton into the console. Sparks burst. The activation systems crashed. The Reclaimer's chamber folded shut like a prison door sealing forever. I turned back toward the shuttle, pain radiating through me but spirit unbroken. I was the last of humanity not to destroy the universe but to protect it. Red blips flared on the scanners as Dominion forces arrived in orbit. No time left to grieve, fear, or doubt. I sprinted for the ship as the bunker shook from bombardment. Flames and chaos waited above, but this time I knew who I was. Not a mistake. A choice. Explosions rippled across the surface as I burst from the bunker, sprinting through choking ash toward the shuttle. Dominion fighters streaked overhead like angry comets, firing blasts into the ground with reckless desperation. They wanted me dead before I could do anything else they did not expect. My lungs screamed for air, my legs burned, but I kept running. Every step was a promise. Humanity would not be defined by its worst creation. I vaulted into the cockpit and sealed the hatch just as the ground behind me erupted in a firestorm that lifted the shuttle off its landing struts. The engines roared to life out of fear rather than engineering, and we shot into the sky like a stone flung by a furious child. Space opened around me, but there was no time to admire the stars. Dominion warships encircled the planet in a crushing net of metal and death. Alarms chirped warnings about targeting locks. Plasma beams flashed past, close enough to paint bright streaks across the hull. The shuttle twisted and rolled under my frantic control, scraping through the gaps between firing arcs. A message crackled through the comms again. "Give up, human." It was Zargoth. His voice had lost its mocking tone entirely. He sounded like someone facing the unthinkable. "You cannot win. Surrender the Lazarus planet, and we will make your deaths swift." I wanted to laugh at the idea that I had any intentions of giving them another chance to weaponize humanity. Instead, I flipped a switch that turned off the comms entirely, because sometimes silence is the most threatening response. The shuttle's computer chimed with a low battery alert, which felt rude given how hard we were working to stay alive. The fleet loomed closer, a wall of cruelty forged by the sins of my people. And then something unexpected happened. A Dominion cruiser suddenly lurched sideways as if shoved by a giant invisible hand. Another collided with it in a shower of sparks. Lights flickered across the entire fleet. Systems malfunctioned. A small screen beside me displayed unauthorized signal interference detected. "Encryption, human." I blinked. The bunker below must have transmitted something before the bombardment destroyed it. The Lazarus network. Humanity's last trick. I activated the signal, unsure whether it would fry the fleet or cook my brain. Blue light pulsed outward like a silent shockwave, scattering through the armada. Dominion soldiers aboard those ships were genetically linked to the same nanotech system that once allowed humans to command them. Their screens went dark. Their weapons dropped power. Their voices filled the calm channels with confusion and fear. The fleet drifted into chaos. The comms flared again. This time not from Zargoth. From other species. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Voices trembling with equal parts hope and terror. "Human, is it true the Dominion forces are powerless? We can fight them now, we can stop them." Finally, I had become a symbol of possibility. The last human in existence, and the most dangerous because I still believed the galaxy could change. I stabilized the shuttle and transmitted the signal on all open channels. "The Drath are not your masters anymore. Their chain is broken. Fight if you want freedom or run if you want peace, but the Dominion does not rule you now." For a moment there was only silence. Then a roar erupted across the comm systems as planets and stations everywhere declared rebellion. The universe had been waiting for a spark. I had just thrown a lit match into a solar system-sized fuel depot. But one enemy had not fallen with the rest. Zargoth's flagship powered forward unhindered. His genetic enhancements allowed him to resist the nanotech's influence longer than the others. He appeared on every remaining screen in front of me, teeth bared in fury. "You do not get to decide the fate of my people. You took everything from us. You made us monsters." His voice cracked like something inside him had finally broken. "And now you think you can erase what you created?" My breath shook. His anger was justified. My existence was a reminder of the worst truth he knew. I did not raise my voice in response. "We made a mistake. But ending the galaxy is not justice. It is just a new crime and a longer story of stupid decisions." His eyes, all three of them, flickered with something almost human. Pain. Betrayal. Loss. Then the fury returned. His flagship charged weapons. I thrust the shuttle toward him on a collision course. The alarms wailed like banshees. If I had to end this by crashing into a living mountain of vengeance, fine. Better one monster dead than another war that ends every species left breathing. But before impact, the flagship convulsed, lights shattering in its hull like cracking bones. The nanotech finally took hold. Systems shut down. The massive vessel drifted off course and vanished into the dark, powerless and silent. I slumped back in the pilot's seat, heart pounding like a stuck engine. The battles around me continued as liberated armies overtook the Dominion remnants. Fire streaked across the stars. Freedom arrived with blood, as it always does. But it was happening. The galaxy was changing. A private hail channel opened. Zargatha's voice came through again, but softer. Almost tired. Human, what happens now? I stared through the cracked cockpit at the burning horizon. Now we build something better. His silence was long. Then he said the last thing I ever expected. Do not forget us. I realized he was not just talking about his people. He was talking about the ones frozen in the vault. The Reclaimers. The memories of what humanity had done. I nodded even though he could not see me. I will not. The transmission ended. The shuttle drifted as battles faded into the distance. Armies of free species began to cheer. A chant spread from ship to ship, planet to planet. Humanity returns. Humanity returns. But I shook my head at the stars. Not returns. Evolves. I may have been the last human, but I was also the first of something new. Not conquerors. Not victims. Not gods. Just a species that finally understood the cost of being dangerous. I leaned back and closed my eyes as the shuttle glided gently forward. The future would be full of rebuilding. Hard conversations. Mistakes made and corrected. But never again would humans hide from responsibility. We were fragile. We were funny. We were feared. And now, for the first time, we were wise. Somewhere in the void, far beyond what any scanner could reach, a new signal pulsed awake. Another survivor. Another story. Another chance. Humanity was not extinct. We had only just begun.